Alright, folks. That's going to do it for now. You are not in the wrong channel. You are in Crypto Marketing Insights, where change is constant. Fraudsters? Real businesses? What is it? Change is always happening, and progress is fast. And these memes are brilliant, and deep, and insightful. And this evolution of meme music from 1500 AD to 2018 is so hilarious. I just could not pass it up. I can't show you the whole thing, copyright and all that stuff, but have a look. The link is in the description below. This will make you laugh. And I play it on double speed because I just find it to be intensely more funny. Anyway, welcome to Crypto Marketing Insights. And today we are going to talk about one major topic. And that major topic is this. Reported on AMB Crypto about a week ago. The Swiss cryptocurrency wallet manufacturer, that you'll see here in a moment, there is a Swiss cryptocurrency wallet manufacturer that is going to make a physical note representing digital currency for the Marshall Islands. That's right, folks, the Marshall Islands. If you haven't heard about it, last year the Marshall Islands adopted the SOV, sovereign cryptocurrency, as the alternative official legal tender for the US dollar, which the Marshall Islands currently uses as its economic fiat currency. Of course, the Marshall Islands does that because in the 20th century, the US did a bunch of nuclear tests around the Marshall Islands, and as a result, they got a compensation package because of the terrible health crisis and economic crisis they faced as a result of those tests. So that compensation package runs out in some years, a couple more years, and rather than being stuck to the past with a fiat currency that has already lost 98.5% of its value and is continuing to decline and is clearly going to return to zero, the Marshall Islands has been forward-thinking and decided, well, we're going to be ahead of the world and be the first nation to go crypto. And they literally have done that, and they are now going to issue a physical note created by a company called Tangem, or Tangem. They're based in Switzerland, and they are a smart card wallet maker, right? A blockchain cold wallet maker. And they are going to issue the world's first banknotes that represent digital currency for the Marshall Islands. And it will have a microchip embedded in it. And the technology for the SOV and the microchip is made by Neema, which is an Israeli-based startup. Right? And they've developed the technology for the SOV and the protocol called Yokwe, which is supposed to prevent any fraud or counterfeiting or things like that. Criminal use is supposed to be essentially much harder with the SOV, obviously, than fiat. Cash is very hard to track, almost impossible, and SOVs clearly are not, since they're blockchain. Right? So the purpose of the SOV, according to the story, is that it will actually conventionalize the use of all this crypto for the tiny Pacific island, because you can use the SOV even if you don't have internet connections, right? It's a physical note. Somehow you'll be able to actually use that even when you're not connected to the internet, right? That makes all the things that give the power of crypto its true values, things like fast transaction, fast validation, low cost of execution, and the ability to send money even remotely. For example, people in the outer islands of the Marshall Islands, they will be able to transact in this cryptocurrency instantly and enjoy it as their new currency, and it will let them position themselves as a very forward-thinking and very well-positioned nation on the blockchain. So when you're looking to how do economies sustain themselves on the blockchain? Yes, maybe it's a tiny island, the Marshall Islands, a tiny nation. It's not a lot of people, but it is a nation and it is an economy, as small as it is. There are many challenges facing any island nation. So any island nation that can survive using a cryptocurrency is a strong demonstration of why this can work around the world, right? You could argue, well, it's easier to manage a small economy on cryptocurrency. Maybe, yes. But it's also harder to do things when you're remote and in the middle of the ocean, right? So they have that challenge. And cryptocurrency helps them make their economy stronger. Then that's a perfect use case for anyone who's not at a financial center in the world. And it's also a perfect use case for anyone who's investing, for example, and from a financial hub, because they can see that it's useful out in the middle of nowhere, just as it would be useful in a larger place. Let's say, New York or LA or Paris or wherever, London. So, these financial hubs are, they can look at these tiny use cases and say, oh, that's an interesting way they've gone ahead and implemented that, and they've done it in a practical way, right? And their President Hilda Hein, she gave a nice quote saying, "This is a historic moment for our people, finally issuing and using our own currency alongside the USD. It is another step of manifesting our national liberty," which is a very nice statement, but really it's way toned down from what this really is, which is a tiny little nation facing massive adversity from Mother Nature itself, right, and as well from human tests of the past, human scientific tests, and facing, a grim economic future without the dollar or without a continued aid package from the U.S. They now have the opportunity to make great gains for their nation at a time when the entire world is basically sleeping on the whole crypto market, and people are ignoring what is essentially the future of money and values and transactions and assets, right? And while people may know about it, it's still the minority of people, but still, while people may know about it, they're not doing much about it. And the Marshall Islands is out there, little engine that could, demonstrating that even they can do it. And if they can do it, bigger nations should obviously be able to do it as well, right? They have more resources, more people, more brain power. They're not necessarily in the middle of the ocean, tiny little island surrounded by nothing but water, right? They've got a lot of land, they've got a lot of connections, borders with other countries. They can, do a lot more things. So the Marshall Islands is also demonstrating that, first of all, they're used to international economics, right? Their money is currently tied to the US dollar. Well, that's already international. And now they're tying their economics to two other companies from two other countries. One company is from Switzerland, which is a financial, mecca since eons, literally, and is considered to be a world leader in blockchain investments and startups, etc. So they're right at the forefront, and it's a tiny little nation who, again, they face natural adversity in the sense that they're up in the mountains, but they're a very secure country, and they're tiny, and they've been at the center of finance, outperforming their counterparts of equal or bigger size, literally since like the Romans, right? Even for thousands and thousands of years, it's been Switzerland, right? As a free nation, and they've been a mighty powerhouse in finance since forever, because that's their thing. That's what they like to do as a national culture. They love money in a deep sense, in a very deep cultural sense, not just being wealthy, but actual working with money and financial stuff. It's one of the cultural traits of that country, and more power to them for it, because they're generally pretty chill people, and not wanting to get into everyone else's affairs and live and let live kind of mentality, which I found is pretty good, right? Maybe it's not the best way to live in the world for some people, but for the Swiss, it seems to work quite nicely. So, and they don't have too many enemies because they're Switzerland. In fact, they usually have a lot, they're friends with everyone. They're neutral. So, there's that. So Switzerland is working with them on creating the physical note, and they have a startup that is at the forefront of making, the change, the hybrid, if you will, the on-ramp of changing from fiat to crypto with literal physical notes. And that's an amazing thing. So is it surprising that somebody from a small nation like that, that's always been focused on financial products and services, is making the next wave of financial products, which is crypto notes? No, it's not surprising. In fact, I expect it, and it's awesome, and it's a terrific representation of small countries being able to outperform their size. And their second partner in this is this Israeli company called Neema, right? And Neema, or Nema, however they pronounce it, made the protocol that SOV runs on, made the the tech, and made the chip that it's going to have embedded in the note. And again, Israel is startup nation, right? It's a tiny nation, just like Switzerland and the Marshall Islands. Well, the Marshall Islands is really, really tiny, but like Israel is a small nation, relatively, and surrounded by a lot of adversity. I don't think anyone will argue that. They've got a lot of adversity internally. They got a lot of adversity externally. They face a lot of challenges in terms of the environment, in terms of natural resources, in terms of geopolitical stuff, in terms of military stuff, in terms of terrorism stuff and everything else. So they face a lot of threats and threats to their actual existential threats, right, that are real. And as a result, their nation has always been quick to learn to adapt to change. And that is the hallmark of surviving and evolving, right? Anyone who studied Darwin knows that. Like, if it's not the fastest or the smartest that survive, it's the ones who are most able to adapt to change. And Israelis have demonstrated that they are very keen to adapt to change, and the Marshall Islands too. And you can see Switzerland as well. Like, people think Switzerland is an old, very, very old, stodgy country. But the reality is Switzerland's culture and its relationships with other cultures and its relationships with finances and economics have drastically evolved over the millennia. And if you study at all their history, you will see that. Like, they have adapted to many changes and many geopolitical shifts and many cultural shifts and all kinds of things. Even Europe, it's full of rich history, right? And they've survived it somehow, right? By remaining neutral and adapting to change, right? That's their thing. It's the fact that they remain neutral lets them adapt to change because they're not emotionally tied to any one decision necessarily. Not too much. They are willing to change, and that keeps them ahead of the pack. And the same thing with Israel keeps them, it keeps them surviving and thriving and building, despite all the adversity. And as a result, their companies have the same kind of progress thinking. Always must achieve something kind of mentality, even if it's short term and not too long term thinking. It's, as a culture, they do push forward, relentlessly. They don't stop pushing forward, and that's how they achieve things. And the Marshall Islands, which seems like a very, relaxed, chill place for a lot of people to go visit, and if you live there, it's probably a lot harder than it seems on the postcards, because you're out in the middle of nowhere. Adaptation is highly required and necessary, right? The ability to adapt to change. So these three little nations have come together and formed this little triad, essentially, of being the first little engines that could, and all together now they're pushing forward and making this historic change, right? And it's not an accident, right? Not an accident Marshall Islands has decided to go this way, to go this way. Venezuela made the petro, which we all know is a joke that Maduro made just to basically levy fines on people and collect money for oil, and collect money now for also anybody who's doing anything in crypto without his express permission from his authorities. They have to pay fines in the petro, and that's all it's really used for. It's a joke, like Venezuelans don't want to use the petro. They're buying Bitcoin and Dash if they're into crypto. They're definitely not, buying the petro en masse. And so now, you've got nations like that, Venezuela, that are enforcing a kind of fake centralized crypto, which is just a fork of, I think Bitcoin or something, and it's just, not decentralized at all, obviously. versus the SOV, which is this real, yes, centrally controlled, but real sovereign cryptocurrency, which is, put into place by a real democratic government, not a dictator who was put in place by a previous dictator, but an actual real currency that the people will, be able to benefit from. That is forward thinking. Also, Russia, perfect example, a good friend of Venezuela and a lot of other shady characters. Putin, right? His government has now made it required that as of this year, students are required to know blockchain technology at a competent level in order to graduate high school and go to university, etc. So think about that. Now you got an entire nation of people that are going to be trained from a certain age onward. When you're 18, you know about this stuff. And that means you're entering the workforce competent in the blockchain. You're entering the university competent in the blockchain. Think about all the advancements that can be made when your entire nation's youth are educated in this stuff. All your young adults are educated in this stuff. Right? What other nation is doing that? None. Right? The Marshall Islands, yes, they're implementing it, and they're making a practical implementation as a nation, which is amazing and leaps ahead of so many other countries. But Russia is actually educating millions of people every year at that age, far more than exist in the Marshall Islands, obviously. Millions of people, millions of Russians every year are going to be blockchain educated, which is terrific on one hand for the Russian economy, like massively terrific. It's great. Like they're going to have so many people who are competent in this tech that they can go out and actually create startups and revolutionize their economy and get Russia to be a stronger, more powerful country again on financial stuff, on economics and everything else. On the other hand, it also means that, sure, Putin's government can train a bunch of people and can recruit more people who can do dirty work for them on the blockchain and off the blockchain, on side chains and everywhere else with crypto and all the other related tech, right? So Russia is making the distinct decision that education, right, is their way forward. And if you think about it, they're not wrong. Right? That's how every other country has gotten strong. You got to have educated people. They can do things, right? So they're investing in the future of the education of their students by making sure everyone knows crypto. And other countries are sitting idle, announcing press releases. We like crypto. Everyone should use crypto. We should all learn crypto. Not actually doing it. Not actually learning it. Not actually making it a requirement of getting anything done in your country. If it was required in more countries, the U.S., England, Germany, wherever, Japan, right, France, you name it. If it was required in these major nations of the G8, Canada, Australia, whatever, you would see millions upon millions of people in those nations graduating with those skills and entering the workforce with the skills and adaptability to survive the future of finance. Right? So it's critical. The future of business, the future of marketing, the future of everything we do in business, in companies and entities. And, the reason most of us get up in the morning to go work, that needs to be secured too by having proper future financial systems in place. And not having them in place is only retarding and slowing down and ultimately hurting our growth rates. And we're going to eventually go into massive recession as a G8 block of nations unless we actually do something to counter the effect of, the second and third world nations of today who are making rapid advances and are going to take over the positions of, leaders in finance tomorrow. Now, it's easy to argue that with the power of the West and everything else that currently exists today, there's no way any second or third world nation could do something like that. But I would say change is very often subtle until it's too late to do anything about it. And then when it happens suddenly, you think, oh, that's a surprise. But in reality, it has already been happening for years. right? That's why it's too late to change or to resist the change when it happens. Because it's been happening already. There's nothing you can do about it at that point. The only way you can stop the whole system that you like, if you like it, from spinning onto its head and becoming a world that is essentially owned by the likes of China, Russia, North Korea, and Venezuela, right? The only way you can stop that from happening is by actually adopting blockchain and crypto early enough that it becomes something that the current, free world is the leader of. And technically, they're still the leader of it, but that leading position is slipping away very quickly, and it will continue to erode until it is completely in the hands of the bad actors, unless the West gets off its backside and starts doing something. And I'm not just saying this isn't like Clash of the Civilizations or some ridiculous Hollywood production, okay? Which are, by the way, very fun and entertaining. This isn't the Lord of the Rings. This is reality. These are, there's 214 countries or something in the world, depending on how you count them. And those nations are all vying for the top spot. Everyone wants to be top dog. And it's, in fact, easier in many ways for the little actors, the smaller economic actors, to make more significant gains than it is for the big actors to multiply their gains, right? That's why people invest in altcoins versus Bitcoin, because they think that it's much easier to make money in a pump and dump than it is to make money investing in the original long-term steady coin, right? Relatively. So with that in mind, keep in mind this is the marketing arc of the crypto history, right? This is all part of that marketing arc, the super story of how the little engine that could nation went from being this tiny remote country in the middle of nowhere to being this like superhero, first on the forefront, pioneering nation, embedding crypto into physical notes and putting it in the hands of every citizen, right? They did that with the help of two other, little tiny powerhouses as well, and the three of them got together, and this, they went through all the obstacles, they had all the adversity in the start, they had all the losses at the start, they had all the bad things happen to them, they slogged through a bunch more challenges, they went to try to find themselves and their place in the world and find the meaning of who they are, and all that growing up stuff. So in a sense, it is very, you could make a movie out of it, but this is actually reality, right? We're talking about a real country changing the way that money is used and the way that humans relate to their money and behave with their money. And that is a massively inspirational and aspirational story, I would argue, for the blockchain, and far better for the world than what is happening right now in the likes of some other countries that I've spoken about, that are doing things not necessarily for the benefit of their citizens or the rest of mankind, right? And so which side of history would you rather be on? On the little engine that could, or on the big ogre that's just smashing his way through things and trying to be the big and scary monster? For me, it's a simple choice. Ogres are cute in some cartoons, but generally speaking, I don't want much to do with them. I'd rather be with a little engine that could and makes progress and makes a better reality for themselves and those around them. That's where I'd put my money in the long term. I'd say bet on those who are standing up for freedom and using the technology in the right way. And that means that we in the West need to educate our young from a very young age, the youngest possible age. As soon as, kids today should be learning about crypto when they learn about money. That's my opinion. I'm sticking to that. And again, this is not financial advice. I'm not a financial advisor. Do your own research. This is for entertainment purposes only. I hope you've enjoyed it. Thanks again for your engagement. And let me know what you think about this particular story. I'm really curious. I also wanted to mention real quick, some people have been asking me for a while, how can they donate to my channel and support